Right, this video is going to show you how to do pasta if you wanted to do it in a tomato sauce. Now, I'm trying to get this done quickly because it's obviously steaming up the camera. Once your water, put some water on to boil, about half fill your pan and bring that up to the boil. Once it's up to the boil, very carefully add your pasta. Now that was a very small pasta, so it's probably going to take about 5 minutes to cook, but depending on the pasta you've got, it could be in there for about 10-15 minutes. Now, ideally, we would have enough pans and enough hobs for you to be able to prepare your sauce at the same time. Unfortunately, we don't. So if you were doing this at home, you could start frying up your vegetables as soon as they're prepared. But for the purposes of school, we're going to need to cook that pasta off first, and then we will actually get our sauce prepared. So while our pasta is cooking, we can get some of our other bits and pieces ready. So I have already, and again, if you can't remember how to do this from previous lessons, then you can look back onto one of the other videos. But I've just chopped up here my peppers and my onions ready to use. You might have some mushrooms here as well. You could have some courgettes. The other thing I'm going to do ready is open up my can of tomatoes. Now, you may have one of the ones which needs to use a can opener, or you may have a ring pull. So what you need to do with this, if you haven't done one of these before, is just, I'll try and get this, you can see on the camera, pull up the ring pull first of all, so that it goes up into an upright position, and then put your thumb through and just pull back on it, and that's going to open up your can. Again, make sure that you don't cut yourself on any of the edges if they are a bit sharp, and that can then go into the recycling bin. So back then to the pasta, and as before, if you did watch the other video, the best way to check if it's cooked is to just pull a piece out, leave it to cool down, and then taste it. But obviously you need to wait for it to cool down first. Now, I'm not going to taste this because it's very small pasta, so I can see that that is cooked as it needs to be cooked. So the next thing we need to do now is to drain the pasta. Now, depending on how confident you feel with the weight of the pan, you may just want to put the colander straight down into the sink and tip the pasta straight into there, or you may feel happy, comfortable in just holding it to do that. So if that's the case, hold your colander up and then very gently tip your pasta into your colander. Then if you just rinse it under the cold water tap, I'm not getting this in now. Okay, just rinse it under the cold water tap, and that will make sure that the pasta doesn't stick together. And then what we're going to do to make sure the colander is there ready for somebody else to use is just tip that pasta into our container that we're going to take our pasta home in, because this will be going back into our pan. At this point then, you need to wash and dry your saucepan out ready to use for your sauce. So I've put a tablespoon of oil in my pan. I am then going to add my onions and my peppers. I'm not preheating that oil first because it will heat up very quickly, so get your vegetables in straight away, and then we're just going to stir those using, now something I didn't mention, but as you can see I'm using a wooden spatula. Again, when you're using utensils at home, you know exactly what they're being used for. In school we use the wooden spatula if we're doing something savoury, because then if we're using particularly things like garlic, frying those up, we wouldn't want that then on our wooden spoons, which we're going to use for sweet products. So we use a wooden spatula if we're doing something savoury, and we use our wooden spoons if we're doing something sweet. Now that just needs to be left on the hob for a few minutes just to soften up. If you were, as I said, using any courgettes at this point, any mushrooms, you may want to put those in as well. But generally it tends to be the harder vegetables that we want to fry off just to soften them up for a few minutes. Personally, if I use mushrooms, I actually add the mushrooms after I've added the tomato base, because I don't like them too crispy in this sort of dish. I actually like them to be nice and soft. So once that's been frying for a few minutes and started to soften up, you can then add your chopped tomatoes in. Now if you haven't got chopped tomatoes, if you've just got a tin of tomatoes, you can break those up once they go into the saucepan, so that's not a problem. And some of you may have just brought in passata, which also is fine. You may at this stage then, if you want to, add a stock cube or put some herbs in there, so you're putting in some seasoning, and any other vegetables that you're using can go in at this stage. So I've just put a bit of sweet corn in there. Again, if I was using mushrooms, it's at this point that I would put the mushrooms in, because as I said, I prefer them not to be crispy in this type of dish, but again, that's just entirely up to your personal preferences and tastes. So I'm just again going to leave that on now for a few minutes just to cook through. Now on the occasions where we are leaving things to cook through, we can just get our dishes done. That saves doing them all at the end, and again that's good practice even if you're doing this at home. So once we've left that now for a few minutes, we're going to pop the pasta in. Okay, again just being very careful when you do that, and then just mixing it all around to make sure that the sauce and the vegetables are mixed in properly with the pasta. So once all of that is mixed in, I'm going to take it off the hob, again being very careful, and we're just going to transfer that into the container that we're taking it home in, and then we just need to get our final dishes done. But that is how you do your pasta hot.